Hello guys, so tonight we're on the sort of flashback or blast from the past rainbow patterns again, and this time it's going to be Bob Church's Appetiser lure. So I suppose this is invented by the famous Bob Church himself back in, I think, the 70s, and it's a fry pattern as such, and I suppose it would be as effective today as it was back then. I remember catching fish on it myself. It is a little bit more complicated to tie than a lot of the flies that were back then, so I suppose it's similar in a way to a Viva, but a little bit more complicated materials wise. So this is a standard B830 size 8, but I think I've seen it from very small size 12 up to maybe size 6s, so pick a size that suits yourself. And I'm going to use black thread here. I'm going to take the thread down to the bend of the hook, and then I'm just going to give that a run of super glue, and that secures it, stops stuff spinning, and coats the hook a little bit, gives a bit more protection. So tail on this fly is a mixture of 3 different feathers. So we have like a Highlander green cockhackle, we have a hot orange cockhackle, and we're going to have a little bit of grey mallard. So if I take 2 hackles here and I lay them side by side, if I then take section of them, now I've purposely picked 2 hackles that are kind of similar in size, so as whenever I pull them up that the tip should be fairly close to match. So I'll pull these out till they're sort of 90 degrees, and then I'll grab my bunch and rip it off, and then I can take this and I can sort of twirl it through my fingers just to mix the fibres together, and that'll give us sort of like a mixed bunch, Highlander green, hot orange. So tail length, anything from sort of half the length of the body maybe to up to the length of the body I suppose would be acceptable. So we'll place that in and sort of pinch it in place and tie that in. So here we have a tail that's maybe, what, 3/4 or so the length of the body. So we're going to start to tie that down, and then any of these sort of longer fibres will clip off because we don't want that to make it too bulky at the head. So I'm going to put a little bit of clear varnish onto that, and then I'll tie that forward. So next we're going to put on a little bit of grey mallard on the top. Now we can strip a bunch off this, or what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to separate out the very tip of it. I'm going to take myself back to the point where this is tied in, and I'm going to tie it on the top longer than the tail, and then I'm just going to pull that back until the length matches the fibres that I had on underneath it, and that'll give me a nice neat tail. Tie this in forward and then snip it off. So rib. Now as far as I know, the original rib on this was a oval silver, and it's an oval silver over a white chenille. Sometimes ovals can get lost in chenille, so you may want to use a flat silver, but we're going to stick here with that and go with a sort of, this is a Danville size 14 silver, and that's on the sort of thicker side, so it should show through. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tie that on underneath, and I'm going to wrap it back here to my tail tie-in point. And as you can see, it's sort of, you can imagine it's on, if you were looking that way at the fly as a clock face, it would be tied on at around about 4 to 5 o'clock if you were looking from front on the fly. So body is this white chenille, and I'm going to strip that for a centimetre or so to get me a tie-in that doesn't create bulk. And then we'll take our tie-in thread forward. Wrap our white chenille body. When I get to the front there, I'm just going to pinch it to hold it in place while I tighten that up. And then I'll come through the chenille. So a few turns. Trim this off, and then these little bits at the front I'm just going to pull off to give me core again and get that tied down. Then we take our tinsel and we can wrap that through that, and as you can see it does tend to bed into it a bit, but it's still visible. So what we will do then is, when we get it to the front, let's get it up on the side there, get a turn across that, couple to hold it, turn this out so that it's in line with the shank of the hook, and then trim it off. So as you can see, we can see the rib through that, but if you wanted it to be more prominent than that, you could, as I say, wrap it flat or wrap it in the opposite direction. So if it wrapped in the opposite direction to what the chenille went on in, then it'll cross the wraps, if you understand, and it'll stand out a little bit more. So that's just different considerations for wrapping on ribs. So the throat on this fly then is a repeat of the tail. So we'll take the same, get the two feathers, line them up, turn out the fibres out to the side and grab that and rip it off. And again I'm going to roll that between finger and thumb to mix the fibres. I'm going to flip the fly, set this on underneath, pinch it in place, do a pinch loop like you were tying in a wing, and tighten that down once it's in place. Now, length, up to yourself, can be the length of the body if you want, or you can grab these ends and before it's tied totally in place, just tighten that up a little bit. The chenille body will tend to kick it out a little bit more, so that may not sit the way you want it to all that easily. So what we do is we get that the length we wanted and then trim off those ends. While the ends are still sticking out, I'm going to have a tiny little dab of super glue or varnish just to make sure they don't slip out. And then we're going to take our mallard feather again, which we'd folded back. Remember, we used the tip of it. So now if we take a few of these fibres and fold them forward to create another sort of a V, we can do the same thing again. Tie it into that gap and then try and keep it directly on top and pull that forward until we get it down to the length we want, and then tighten up your wraps so that it stays in place. Flip it back over, pull it out 90 degrees, let your scissors settle down into it and trim that. going to do about a centimetre or so of my thread with super glue, and that'll let me have 3 or 4 wraps over that just to make sure it holds it in place. So wing. So wing on this fly is white marabou. So I'm going to take a bunch of marabou, strip it off the side of the feather, and then I'm going to sort of roll it, the base of it here, in finger and thumb just to mix the up. So I'm going to use my nails just to strip back some of the fluff to give me a nice neat tie-in point, and then I'm going to hold that on top, pinch loop and tighten that down. And the fact that I stripped back the fibres means that I have a nice neat tie-in. So then this wing I'm going to take back, and I'm going to let my finger and thumb slide back here until we're at the length of the tail, and then I'm going to rip that off instead of cutting it, and that will give me a more natural end to things. Then we lift up the tag ends, trim them off. A little bit of clear varnish just to that cut in, and then tie over it. Okay, so if you want to put a bit of flash in, you can at this stage. So I'm going to use a little bit of like a pearl flash and glue type material. I'm just going to put in 2 strands. So one strand tied long over the top, folded back on itself, and then trim it off at wing length. And in finishing this fly now, what we need is a little bit of natural grey squirrel. So we take a grey squirrel tail, cut out a bunch. If you want, you can put this in a hair stacker or whatever, but I'm going to pull out all the short stuff out from underneath it there. I'm going to wax up my tying thread. Create a little waxed platform for that. I'm just thinning this out because I feel it's a little bit thick because it is stiff, and I only want it as a cap. So I'm not going to do it full length of the wing. I'm going to do it sort of till it's about the little bit beyond the length of the body itself. I'm going to transfer hands. I'm going to trim that off at the point where I want to tie it in, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my super glue and I'm going to put a little tiny little dab of it just right in the tip of that. I'm going to set it in place, and before it dries I want to wrap that on, and that will give me a secure, neat tie-in of the squirrel, because squirrel has a tendency to pull out because it doesn't compress. So that is all the materials attached to our fly. So what I'm going to do now is finish the head. So I'm just going to run some super glue on maybe 2 inches or so of my tying thread. I'm going to start at the front and I'm going to wrap backwards, and wrapping that, as you see, will then create like a blob of glue, which then as each wrap goes into it gets coated and included in the head, and that will give us a really secure head. Come to the front, run a half hitch into that, and trim that off. Okay. You can wait for that to dry or do what I did there, and then what we'll do to finish this fly is clear varnish, and we'll just give the head a coat of that. Clear the eye, and that is our Bob Church appetizer lure finished. An oldie, but I suppose still a good fly, as they say. So if you like what you see, give us a like, subscribe, tell your friends, and until next time, tight lines, and thanks for watching.